My name is Madison Post. I go by MJ. I grew up in mostly in central Illinois. I was an Army brat, moved around a lot in my early childhood. NOAA is their chief job, I would say, in the world is to make accurate weather forecasts. That takes a lot of knowledge. When you think of weather models and the things that go into those initializations of the model to make good predictions of what's going to happen 3 days, 5 days, 10 days from now, you have to know intricate details about how things work in the atmosphere, how energy is exchanged between oceans and atmospheres, how the orography affects major systems, air flowing over mountains and things. So we did a lot of collaborative experiments with international partners. We were on a lot of ocean-going vessels that would load in Darwin, Australia, and do measurements around Manus Island, where there were major climate research going on. It involved aircraft, it involved ships. A lot of land-based experiments occurred in Europe or on the Madeira Islands, and then all over the United States. We did quite a bit of work at White Sands Missile Range. During the Scud missile crisis, one of the questions was, how high do we have to intercept a missile incoming with nerve gas in order for it to disperse? And so we were there with our Doppler LiDARs. You know, they were shooting in rockets and making releases at different altitudes, and we would scan around and see, how far down this simulated nerve gas got. So things like that are, important questions to answer. And our mission at NOAA wasn't specific for, military purposes, but we had the tools to make important measurements. So we did that. I got my job at NOAA out of college. I found out later because I was a ham radio operator, and I picked these skills up in high school. I enjoyed technical things and actually formed a ham radio club without knowing much about it, and we sort of taught each other how to do ham radio. Well, it turned out in Antarctica, there were hundreds of people applying for this job at NOAA to go to Antarctica for a year and run their equipment. And they wanted somebody that could tinker and fix things with tools at hand and parts at hand that you can't just go to the hardware store and get. And a ham radio operator was a great description of that type of person. So I got the job, trained with 3 other people, and we went down for a year. And that was my first experience as a working individual. So it turned out that the job I had at NOAA when I returned was to build optical systems. And because I had some experience, hands-on experience with optics, they decided to keep me on after Antarctica, and as an electrical engineer actually, but building optical things and controlling them electrically. And that really didn't ring the bell for me. It really was not quite what I wanted to do. It was sort of the same day in and day out. But my bosses were wise enough to say, well, what does interest you? And I said, well, I like the science that these people around me are doing. I like the fact that they know where there's a gap in knowledge, and they design an experiment to understand how the atmosphere works better. So my bosses let me go back to school at night, and I developed some skills in physics and writing papers, communicating. And after 3 years, got a master's degree and was able to change my job description from engineer to physicist. And then I went all over the world with our instruments, measuring atmospheric effects on mountains, oceans, did a lot of climate change research. And all this came about because I was a ham radio operator, and I enjoyed tinkering with things. Well, it's one of the few places in America where we have truly dark skies. It's not perfect, but it's better than almost everywhere else. There are other places that might be a little better technically in terms of darkness or seeing conditions. We say, how turbulent is the atmosphere, like the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but it's hard to get there. And this is a very convenient place for me to set up a remote system that, again, I could operate from my comfort of my office. There are jobs out there in almost every field that you have curiosity and skills in. And if you develop a skill, you're sort of following your heart. And it takes some work, but there are jobs out there in almost anything you can think about if you become good at it. And so it's worth the effort.